up, everybody? Emergency edition of the Celtics Talk podcast. Yes, the Celtics making moves before the offseason really even gets going. Like the draft and free agency still a little ways away, but Celtics get started today. Reports traded for Kristaps Porzingis, a 3-team deal that will deliver Malcolm Brogdon to the Clippers. Washington will get Marcus Morris and some draft assets, and a seismic move here for the Celtics, adding a $38 million player, but someone who's coming off one of their best seasons of their career and probably to an all-star level. Eager to see exactly how the fit is. Called up my guy, Brian Robb from Mass Live. You know us. You hear us over on the Winning Plays podcast at times to talk about the fallout from this. Are the Celtics better than they were just a couple hours ago? Like, what are the big questions moving forward? And is Porzingis actually going to be here longer than a season? Let's get into it with B-Rob. All right, B-Rob. If you any of you faithful listeners of B-Rob's Winning Plays podcast, he gave me a list of trades last week that could involve Malcolm Brogdon. Was Kristaps Porzingis on that list?
I honestly don't remember. I don't think it was. It was on the article on Mass Live.
You wrote it, right? So I don't know. But
I did. Yeah, I did write on Mass Live, so it was covered. But I don't think I threw that one. I have to go to the tape on that one.
I probably would have said no way if you had mentioned it, because I would have said there's no way they can fit this contract into the mix. And so yeah, all right. I try to pride myself on being somewhat smart about the cap, and I don't know. So maybe you can help me. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's start big picture. What was just your initial reaction to news that the Celtics are doing this 3-way deal to acquire Kristaps Porzingis?
It's a bit not as much of a shock as it would have been a couple weeks ago, because from what I heard, like the rumors are fast and furious out there in the last couple weeks with this team in terms of the guard market. And the logical guy to go, the one that you and I both, I think, kind of pegged as the odd man out in this situation, was Malcolm Brogdon. And Malcolm Brogdon, there are a lot of different ways you could go around trading his deal, but one obvious path to do is to take a more of a bigger swing type deal. And that's what this does. It opens the door, creates potentially some other issues that we'll get into, but as far as better allocating the resources on your roster, I don't mind it at all from the standpoint of being like, could you use an extra third or fourth like strong big, or an extra third or fourth strong guard? And as we saw last year, that front court could certainly use a boost from a rim protection and a 3-point shooting department.
And I think if you do rewind those tapes, what you'll find is me saying, like, it's going to be hard to find an impact big that I thought could really help this team using Brogdon's contract. I think we went so far as to call it a negative asset, and some people gave me some blowback on that. Now, I mean, time will tell if they paid a hefty price to make this move, and there's so many layers to it. Like, the cost doesn't seem like a lot going out, but when you think, they have to give up Brogdon and Gallinari, essentially their summer of 22 is out the door, and you probably can't bring back Grant Williams now. It is like there is some trickle down effect on like how much they're giving up. I agree with you. Like, I think from a roster balance standpoint, probably the best situation possible in terms of adding a starter level big that can pair now and take some of the load off of Rob and Al. Better money wise, like now you at least have a roadmap to definitely being under that second apron. But then there's reports that they're pondering this extension. How like, does this make any sense to you, B-Rob?
I mean, the extension part of it is, to me right now, is pretty wild, because you can't. Part of moving Brogdon now was to kind of better line up your books for the future.
Exactly.
And while also this is a move that helps you go for it now while also doing that. It's kind of doing both. That goes away if you give Porzingis $80 or $100 million extension. So especially if you do it before you even see him on the court with these guys. Like there are some fits questions here, I think, Chris, that are worth considering before you back up the Brinks truck for Porzingis, for a guy who has dealt with health issues just as much in his career as a guy.
Can we see him play 50 games before you do back up that Brinks truck, when you're already committing $110 million soon enough, per season to the Jays, and that escalates from there? So I'm with you. Like I that part of this process, and I know sometimes messages get jumbled, but I believe it was Mark Stein, and like he's usually impeccable on this stuff. And I'm trying to
I
as
wonder if
we
agent posturing, if you will.
ooh,
Maybe a little hardball on Porzingis' part with his opt-in part of it. I don't know. I mean, like time's going to tell what that actually plays here because I think Porzingis himself is in a corner here because if he opts out, like he's not if he would opt out, he's not going to have a free agent market that's
yeah.
anywhere close to 35 million. So it's like, and what are the Wizards going to give him that next big deal?
Nope.
No, like they're going to re-sign him to flip him if they do anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, that I mean, I guess time will tell on that one.
It's just interesting to me because I do think that part of the allure of this deal is like the flexibility, as you were alluding to, is that you get through this year and now, okay, you get to see, make sure, like all we're assuming here is Jaylen Brown signs a supermax. Jaylen Brown wants to be here, like that. Porzingis fits with this group, and then you get to next summer and you're like, maybe you win a championship, maybe you're riding high off of that, maybe that dictates like exactly which direction you go. But I need to see it before I'm ready to be like, yeah, they need to give money. I know Brad in a previous iteration loved extensions, and this was this perfect scenario where they would trade for someone like this and immediately give them that extension. This cap doesn't allow for it now, this new CBA, and I am very intrigued to see exactly where it goes from here. We're probably getting too deep in the weeds for most people, so let's start with this. What's the lineup look like? Is he just unequivocally your starting center? And is Al part of that group too?
It's a fascinating one. I would imagine you're bringing this guy in. You're not bringing him in to come off the bench
Right.
for a variety of reasons, particularly to keep him happy out of the gate. So yeah, so that leaves you're not going Porzingis, Horford, Rob Williams in this front line. I don't think you're going that big,
Triple big.
but triple bigs. Maybe we'll see that lineup at some point. Joe will have some fun with us. But yeah, so the question is, how many true bigs you're gonna have? Because even the fit with Horford and Rob out there, it's gonna work in a lot of regular season games. But
Mm-hmm.
is that your default? Do you want to be playing smaller, as was the case with their best lineups for most of last year? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. That's the question. This begs you um, plenty of work to do for Joe Mazzulla and his coaching staff heading into training camp, if assuming this gets done, because I don't think there's a slam dunk option on that front. And I think what it does allow you to do is rest Al, rest Rob, rest
Right.
Porzingis easily. And to be honest, there's going to be probably 20, 30 games all year long where all those three guys are maybe healthy
Yeah.
and like on the floor together because you would think the team is exceedingly cautious in protecting all three and preventing the wear and tear and the durability issues that have inevitably cropped up with at least a couple of them.
It's weird for me because like coming into the year, I said maybe this is the time you shift Al to the bench role. Just some of that clunkiness with like having to sit out every back to back. I do think there's a value in continuity and sort of establishing that group. And I just felt like this was probably the right time. In that instance, I was thinking maybe Grant Williams is your four, and maybe just that's part of the way that you lean heavier into him. Now I'm looking at him like, can you play Porzingis and Rob in the same lineup? Like that's a lot of, I mean, a lot of height. I mean, we're just not used to having so much size, but I can see instances where, Porzingis is your backline defender capable of doing the pick and rolls, but, giving Rob the freedom to play on the perimeter. But I don't know if that's perfect. I don't, in my mind, it's not, I just don't naturally gravitate towards that. So, okay, is Horford starting with Porzingis? And now you're running into the same thing where it's kind of like in and out, and who's your backup for in that instance? Are you just going small and Tatum plays that? So I have a lot of questions about necessarily how the lineups look and like how Missoula maximizes this. But I'm with you. Like, probably not going to be a time when all these guys are itching and that you want to play them 30 minutes apiece. And so, but it's a contract year for Porzingis, so he's going to. There's so many layers to this that are at play. Are they a better team today than they were 12 hours ago?
If you get the 22-23 Porzingis, no question. That he hasn't been able to put together these kind of seasons like he had in Washington consistently throughout his career. He obviously flashed in a big way in New York early in his career and then faded from there. And the fit with the Mavs with Luka was never great. And I think he got exposed at times defensively in terms of just his, ability to defend the perimeter well.
Sure.
But if he's at his best and him being a third option on this team next to Brown and Tatum, I mean, that is the type of looks he's going to get is going to be far better than he's seen in his entire career. And that is a situation that bodes well for the Celtics offense and potentially will bode well for the Celtics just maximizing this group for the postseason with a strong later season because you have a bunch of players that can get you 20, 25 a night without putting as much pressure on Jason and Jalen now.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part to me is that I think the offense, which obviously has, even when Brad was doing the postseason thing, he kind of, or the after the season thing, he sort of kept pushing back. Like, yeah, we want to get back to a defensive identity, but like if you look at it, the offense is what fell this team more often than not in situations this season. So I do think he has a priority there to make that better. I do agree in the sense that I guess what if the playoffs taught us anything, especially with teams like Denver, it's like know your 7 guys and get the best 7 guys possible. And yeah, you need guys to help get you through the year and steer you and direct you and limit the wear and tear. But you start doing the math now, and even though they're losing, Brogdon, and if Grant doesn't come back, and Danilo, and I didn't never really even factor him into the equation because he wasn't there last year, and I didn't know what to expect, especially
you don't know what you
around
have out of him.
Yeah. So you still got Jason, Jalen, Marcus, Derek, Rob, Al, Kristaps. So you're at 7 pretty quickly. And you still could probably use one more in there. And maybe that's internal development of Hauser. Maybe that's, the 35th draft pick, which we'll get into too. Or is it like taxpayer mid-level? What would you do? How are you finishing off this roster?
Yeah, I'm keeping all my options open. The draft night becomes very intriguing now because clearly you need some extra wing and guard depth now if this deal goes through. And JD Davidson's there. I don't think he's going to be expected to be a contributor at all this year, given his age and his development. That's probably more of a long-term path. So can you find a guard in this draft that can be, a 4th or 5th option in your guard rotation? I think that's presumably a possibility. If not, then $5 million the taxpayer, like it's not going to be a great player, but you could definitely sell guys being like, listen, there is a spot available behind Brown and Tatum on their bench, and you're going to play 15 minutes a game there and compete with Sam Hauser for minutes on a title team. So that could appeal to guys too that might want to, get a ring or just kind of rebuild some value on a winning team. So I think they're going to look at all their options, and then the Grant sign trade options also on the table too, where you potentially could get a smaller salary guy back as part of that deal. So all this stuff is probably going to play itself out in the next week or two, but I don't know, like what do you think is the more reliable bet there? Like, do you go guard for the draft? Or you try to get more of like a rangy wing there to potentially fill a role on the bench.
So in my expert draft analysis, which has been like cramming everything I can read in the last 48 hours, I've determined that there's not a lot of good bigs like out there. Not like there's certainly not a lot of options. Like you can find it, but you got to either have the number 1 pick or be in it probably in the first round. So I'm not as bullish on the idea of just finding a 5. Now maybe someone lingers into there. The Indiana kid Trace Jackson Davis, right? And I'm intrigued by some names out there that they could potentially, especially when you talk about guys that have skill sets that mirror like Rob. Now you got Kristaps and Horford working together, Trace and Rob. Like there could be some continuity there where you have backups for backups. I think I'd like to see them develop a 5 eventually, just because of how expensive they can be. And if you are going to pay Porzingis, and again, I just can't quite wrap my head around that. But like, that's a position that regardless of what happens, they're going to need to fill. I think Peyton Pritchard would probably lose his mind if you drafted another point guard. 3 of the last 4 picks have been point guard: Yam, JD Davison, and Peyton. And so so at some point you got to, probably diversify a little bit. Can you find a wing? It feels like going through a lot of the draft stuff, I keep finding guys that look like they could be, I hate to call it like Matisse Thybulle-like, but where their defense is so much more of a priority than their offense. And so I wouldn't mind leaning that way because I do think they need someone that they can develop, that they consistently lean on at that wing position, that takes some stress off Jalen and Jason. Like, I'd love Jason not to have to guard 4s all the time. So I guess that it just comes down to how the board plays out. But I'm probably leaning big wing or center before I'm leaning guard. And that's Chris's draft analysis, that high level where I'm struggling to pull the one dude whose name I put into the story for the guy I want. So what would you do? Like, what's GMB Rob leaning?
No, I think you nailed it. I think getting a defensive minded forward is probably
Yeah.
your best pick. That's a clear need, and that's going to be a competitive marketplace on the free agent market. Like everyone needs those guys. So if
Yeah.
you can gamble, find someone who's proven, um, you know, who knows? Maybe the next Desmond Bain of the world falls to 30 here. You like
Ooh.
in the 30s, or probably not, but that seems to be where there's more depth in this draft than usual, and so you take advantage of that. And I mean, I do think though that with Porzingis here, there could be a case that maybe this is a pick that gets moved to some degree. And if you're
Mm,
going to go all in now, you only have a few roster spots left available. Unless you really get a guy you like here, um, maybe
right.
you can try to move that and get to something else. So it's
Do
important though
you
they add more picks though, more cheap guys though for the future here because
right.
they clearly need that in the roster.
And that's the balance, right? Like what's the cost to get into the first round? And does that now you're adding more salary because first round scale is
Right.
going to be higher than the 35th. And so, I mean, it's just all part of the balance. But how do you feel about that? We've heard reports say, like, could they package, and this was before Brogdon, obviously, but like, if they're just not committed to Peyton long term, do you explore the idea of using Peyton to get up into the first round? And all of a sudden, now now your point guard depth is not what we thought. Ironically,
Right.
within the span of 48 hours, is completely revamped. Would you consider that?
Sure. If you like the guy you're going after more
Yeah.
than Payton Pritchard, it's like it's questioning like we've seen what Payton Pritchard can do, and we had a bit of a pause on that last year, but he's someone who's at least shown that he can give you something and at times in a postseason run.
Mm,
And so if you really like the guy for the future for the now, then yeah, you make that move to get into whatever the 20s or however high you can get with 35 and Pritchard. Um, whether that guy is actually going to fall to you in that spot, I'm a bit
yeah.
skeptical of that. So that makes me think that up like roll the dice 35, use that taxpayer mid level to maybe get a guy you like in there and see what else you can get in the veteran minimum basement bin.
I'm ready for the B-Rob $5 million veteran minimum
Oh yeah, it's
article.
coming. Look
And
out! I wasn't sure they're going to have it, but now it looks like there were all points
that's
ahead
my
for it.
problem. I hadn't factored into the equation. Hey you, have you downloaded the new NBC Sports Boston app yet? It has the latest news, analysis, commentary, and insights from the experts, including Tom Curran, Phil Perry, John Tomasi, and yours truly, Chris Forsberg. You can also listen to podcasts, follow live scores and stats, catch highlights, and watch behind-the-scenes content and interviews. You can download the NBC Sports Boston app now in the App Store or on Google Play. Find the link in the show notes. Let's end on this because I can get you right in that article, so I can just pretend like I actually did and steal it. The Grant situation, because I think this is a fascinating subplot to everything. Like Gallinari is interesting that the poor guy never got to wear the uniform, and that sucks. But that's just the reality of the NBA.
Why did they trade him last year, Chris?
100. I was hoping you
to
would bring this up. This was a prime topic on the Winning Plays pod where we said if you were just this willing to move him, what was the hesitation last year? And that is a little bit baffling to me. And maybe it just takes getting bounced in the Eastern Conference Finals to make you a little bit more edgy. But no, I'm with you. I'm kind of. It leaves you a little bit frustrated that they weren't more willing to be as win now as they were. And maybe the CBA changes that equation and all that. But still, where was this last year? Do you give any consideration? And I haven't even crunched the numbers. Do you give any consideration to if the number is $13 million, whatever it is? Do you roll the dice with overpaying or not overpaying, but of running up the total to keep Grant? And if you are going to sign and trade him, is there any spot that makes sense? Like I know everyone's rumored Dallas and stuff like that. How do we get Josh Richardson back for Grant Williams to make Brad's fever dream become reality?
I mean, it all comes down to how they're going to play. It's hard to work the number. They have to dump some other salary, I think, to conceivably sign Grant to a reasonable number that he would go for, that they would go for.
So let me just do the math real quick. So all right, we take Peyton and you just sign JD Davison instead. There's like $2 million in saving.
Yep.
You move off of Muscala. When is its trigger date?
So that's right before start free agency. I think this 29th, I believe.
Okay. So as much as I think you'd rather keep him because he does have some value as a stretch big and played well and he's an analytics darling, but you move off $3.5 million there. So now you're at $5 million. So it's still a lot of work.
It's tough. it's tough to pull it off. So I mean, there are certainly ways to do it, and draft night will probably tell the tale more so than anything else in terms of how that's going to play out. Because it's if Peyton's not going to move on draft night, it's hard to see him moving him.
True.
But yeah, with a sign and trade, to be honest, I think this is a thing where they would probably take the TPE and have that in their back pocket to improve during the year. Because here's the thing, Chris, like, are this going to be a double big this team this year? If it is, then yeah, Grant is part of the way. If it's not, or if it's only going to be like 20 minutes a game of that, then it's like, it's tough to sell paying, 4 bigs at a combined like $70 million or something like that.
And thing I go back to is what your point on Peyton Pritchard is that if Joe's just not going to play Grant Williams, then it makes it a moot point from the start. Like, you're just not going to pay for someone that's not a surefire part of the rotation. So if you're going to allocate your resources and you know that you're going to potentially, you're investing this much in Porzingis, yeah, I'm with you. Like, if you're just going to go single big and rotate these 3 and, maybe there's times where you're bigger with a big wing or something like that, then yeah, I'm with you. Like, maybe it's just better to start targeting who that veteran guy is or whatever. I feel bad because, like, I would love to have seen what Grant Williams becomes in with this team. But these are the tough decisions you have to make. And I guess based on the playing time last season, we can't be all that surprised.
Yeah, it's a situation where if you're not consistently in the playoff rotation, it's hard to see how big of a contract he would have gotten there. But the good news for you, Chris, though, Derek White will be closing games next year. I think we can safely say that after this move.
I mean, never say never. We did just joke that he could go triple big, and I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, if we're sitting there saying, like, why isn't Derek White playing 32 minutes a game next season, I will lose my mind. But I think the part of the trickle down effect of this Brogdon deal, is part of the reason we've been screaming from the mountaintop since the season ended, is it frees the path for Derek White to be playing the minutes that he should have been playing last year. And I mean, they get a whole lot of. I mean, the Celtics are just full of on-off wizards right now, and maybe that's a bad Porzingis joke. I don't know what his numbers were last year, but between Rob and Derek and Jason, Muscala, even, like, I feel like Brad certainly picks his spots and wants guys, but that's what it comes down to, is like finding guys that accentuate your best players. And ultimately, to bring the conversation completely full circle, Brogdon didn't do that enough. As good as he was in his role off the bench, I think there were some clunky fits with how, especially in crunch time lineups, where it was clear Derek White was better, and the coach should have identified that earlier. And I am eager to see, is Porzingis because we've never seen a 7'2" unicorn with the Jays. Is that the sort of guy that can help unlock them and just create opportunities?
100%. And so it's not 100% the answer, but like you said, I think it's 100% worth trying. And that's what we're probably going to see happen here.
All right. Well, let's see if this thing ever gets to the finish line, and we'll see if they have a draft, and then we'll scream and yell about it on the Winning Plays podcast with B-Rob. All right. I see you get like 94 articles up on Mass Live. Everybody go check out B-Rob. We'll be back on draft night and to get you caught up with more. All right, good stuff. Like I said, on the surface, you want to be excited about this trade. It's certainly, in terms of top end talent, the Celtics have gotten better. I need to figure out what it means for the totality, and some of that will come with what moves come next. And it starts with draft night, only a couple hours away now. We'll see. Do the Celtics hang on to that 35th pick? Do they move up? Do they move out? We're going to be eager to see. And then Brad Stevens is going to talk afterwards. So we'll get a little, maybe some details on this Porzingis move. What comes next? Are they going to use the taxpayer mid-level? A lot of questions left to be answered. It's the best. I know everyone loves the playoffs and stuff like that, but sometimes this feels like the best time of the year. Christmas in almost July. I need everybody to go like, subscribe, check us out on the YouTube page. We'll catch you after draft night on the Celtics Talk Pod.